the heroes lay motionless on the ground, defeated by the gatekeeper of the demon castle. All four of them were unconscious. Despite being the mightiest warriors of their era, they couldn't even overcome a single mid-level monster. Yuki, a demon with a single horn on his head and dark wings, was looking down at them with concern. You see, Yuki was originally a human, but after being reincarnated as a demon, he received a special ability, a cheat that made him overwhelmingly powerful, even more so than the Demon Lord. As a reincarnated demon, Yuki's goal wasn't to establish a tyrannical rule or satisfy his own power lust, causing chaos like the Demon Lords before him. Instead, he simply wanted to help the heroes defeat the evil demons of this age. To make the world a better place, he was the good guy in this story. And in a story, you can never have too many good guys. The leader of this group is Yuga, the wielder of the holy sword, Excalibur. Next is Makana, the powerful maid with a secret crush on Yuga, which everyone knows about, except for Yuga himself. Another one of the heroes is Raven, a handsome man with sharp features and a mysterious aura, something Yuki just couldn't stand. And finally, there's Cecilia, the group's beautiful nun. The demon attacked everyone with finesse. Raven was hit with a vanishing spell, throwing the group into confusion right from the start. He instantly defeated Yuga, only to heal him afterward. He didn't go easy on Makana either, as he found her quite annoying. When he saw Cecilia, the demon was gentler, unexpectedly knocking her out from behind and laying her on the floor. But in that moment, his eyes fell upon her beautiful face and his heart skipped a beat. Although he schemed to keep her by his side, no plan seemed truly feasible. In the end, he simply ordered his 3 loyal subordinates to safely escort the group out of the castle. 30 days later, all 4 of them charged in again, this time without any hesitation. Yuki maintained his evil demeanor, threatening to send them to hell. Yuga bluntly asked for his name, and the demon proudly revealed his lowly status with a mysterious charm. The battle erupted once more, but this time, the evil gatekeeper kept stumbling and tripping over himself. He kept glancing at Cecilia, which angered Yuga, the hero's leader, who was giving his all to defeat the enemy. Just then, Yuki snapped out of his distraction and unleashed his ultimate dark technique on all of them. Unsurprisingly, the heroes were easily defeated. The victor walked around, checking each person's condition. Cecilia seemed completely unharmed, and he suddenly thought that he might have unconsciously placed a protective spell on her. His loyal subordinates arrived to carry the recovered heroes out to a nearby forest. But this didn't discourage the heroes. They just kept coming back, again and again. One night, as Yuki pondered his plan, the Demon Lord also realized that some people were trying to reach him. He figured they must be too weak to even get close. However, the real reason the heroes had been held back all this time was the gatekeeper. Once again, the heroes advanced toward the entrance. And this time, Yuki offered to keep Cecilia under his care so they could proceed to the Demon Lord on their own. Everyone refused except for the mage in the group. She talked about defeating the Demon Lord first, then coming back to rescue Cecilia from the gatekeeper. Despite some hesitation, the other 3 reluctantly left Cecilia behind. Yuki couldn't help but blush, finally alone with her. While Cecilia bravely prepared to fight to her last breath, the flustered gatekeeper told her he never intended to kill her. On the contrary, he confessed his feelings, a brave warrior in the battle of love. Cecilia's face flushed red, but she immediately rejected him flat out. Yuki plopped down on the floor, losing all will to live as tears welled up in his eyes. This was the first time he had ever been defeated by the heroes. Cecilia still thought he was deceiving her, until she saw him slumped on the ground, lost in his sorrow. Just as she was about to launch an attack, she suddenly asked why he, a demon, was acting so strangely when other demons were usually incredibly cruel. Yuki revealed his true identity and the story of his life as a human. Sadly, he also confessed that he had been helping the heroes all along. The bewildered nun asked why he didn't just defeat the Demon Lord himself, but Yuki replied that he never wanted to sit on the throne in the first place. He resigned himself to his fate, assuring her he'd be fine staying in the small room at the castle entrance, now that she had rejected him. Now, the gentle and kind-hearted nun began to worry about him, unable to bear seeing him in such a miserable state. Cecilia reached her hand out to Yuki, suggesting he change his form to start a new life outside. In the royal capital of Manurva, the heroes were welcomed with a grand parade, celebrating their victory from the Demon Lord's castle. Meanwhile, Yuki, having abandoned his post, made his way to Minerva using a map Cecilia had given him. Under his old name, Yuki registered at the local guild, meeting the person who seemed to be in charge, Kramen, who had dark circles under his eyes, exhausted from the flood of work while all the other staff were out watching the parade. Now looking more human, Yuki began to map out his new plan: to make money by taking on guild quests until the day he could confess his feelings to Cecilia. After 1 week of joining the guild, Yuki had quickly risen to D rank. He grew particularly fond of Crayman over any other receptionist and constantly bothered him for his daily rewards. One day, Cecilia made a surprise visit to the guild, startling everyone. Yuki blushed, standing frozen at the sight of her. The two reunited and sat together in a horse-drawn carriage, chatting about everything that had happened since they'd been apart. Yuki was surprised to have been found sooner than expected, and she replied that he hadn't made a wise choice by not changing his appearance or name. Yuki recalled the pain of breaking his own horns and tearing off his own wings to look more human. When the carriage stopped in front of a mansion, 2 guards immediately pointed their spears at him and ordered him to halt. But Cecilia reassured everyone, introducing him as a friend who had come to visit. Even so, Yuki felt he was perhaps unworthy of being with the one he loved. The way people around him treated him made him question his own worth. They sat facing each other, and Cecilia suggested that Yuki leave the guild. She explained that if they became too famous, they might get hired by other nations. High-ranking heroes were highly sought after, and minor nobles often tried to win them over by offering their daughters in marriage. Hearing this, Yuki suddenly asked if Cecilia had received any marriage proposals. She said she had rejected them all, then continued by suggesting he leave the guild to work directly for her, which would be convenient for him since he already had feelings for her. Yuki boldly refused the offer, declaring that he wanted to pursue her in his own way, achieve success on his own merits, and prove his feelings sincerely. He made it clear that his goal wasn't to work for other nations or become famous. He only wanted her. Cecilia laughed at his amusing nature, believing that only a human could be so foolish and cheerful. The conversation ended, but before they each went their separate ways, Yuki hesitantly asked if he could call Cecilia by her first name, and they both agreed to it. The next day, he confidently walked up to the gates of her mansion, but ironically was stopped by the very same human guards. Talk about a turn of fate. Disappointed, he wandered into the city and saw Raven, the hero swordsman, surrounded by a group of girls looking clearly exhausted. Thinking fast, Yuki pointed in another direction and shouted that he had just seen the hero's leader over there. The crowd immediately rushed in that direction, and Yuki quickly grabbed Raven's hand, pulling him away before they could turn back. The two of them stood in an alley, and even then, Raven maintained his mysterious demeanor, not saying a word, which only added to his aloof image. Yuki got annoyed again and was about to leave and mind his own business. But suddenly he was called back. The voice from behind him rang out. It sounded just like an anime character's. Yuki was stunned, unable to believe his eyes, or his ears for that matter. Yuki discovered that Raven, the cold, silent guy, was actually very self-conscious about his voice. Unexpectedly, the shy young man offered to befriend the former demon gatekeeper, leaving Yuki astonished. When he was little, he was bullied for his voice, and only his mother and his cousin didn't laugh at him, and now Yuki didn't either. The two of them formally introduced themselves. Yuki felt a happiness bloom from within. It was the first time in his life that he had a friend. The next morning at the Adventurers Guild was peaceful, and his breakfast consisted of just a simple sandwich. As he was eating, a beautiful woman sitting nearby smiled at him. She introduced herself as Celia Aquarain, the mother of the girl he was secretly in love with. Cecilia. Yuki immediately swallowed his entire breakfast in one bite, trying to hide his embarrassment as he sat beside her, his heart pounding. Flustered, Yuki tried to push the conversation forward, curious about the real reason she had started talking to him. Celia just chuckled softly at his confusion, then apologized for the rudeness the guards had shown earlier. She explained that she wanted to get to know him better, knowing that he had feelings for her daughter, and had decided to test him. She then invited him to the mansion again, and this time, Yuki agreed without hesitation. He noticed that the guards had been changed, and as the two of them entered the main door, they were greeted by an adventurer with 8 years of experience who was now working as a maid at the mansion. While walking around the mansion, they ran into Cecilia in her sleepwear, and she quickly ran into her room, embarrassed that Yuki had seen her like that. Cecilia's mother revealed that she had eavesdropped on their previous conversation and told him that Cecilia had received many marriage proposals, including one from the hero, Yuga. A fire of jealousy erupted in Yuki's heart, and he expressed his intense passion, making clear his determination to pursue Cecilia with all his heart. Celia Aquarain unexpectedly offered to marry Cecilia to Yuki without any prompting, but the demon boy politely refused. He explained that he first needed to build a stable life for himself to be worthy of her daughter. This was a test, and he passed with flying colors, winning the approval of Cecilia's mother. Now, Yuki finds himself deep in the Orcel forest, working as a C-rank adventurer, persistently hunting and slaying a cockatrice. He has been working harder than ever since learning that the hero, Yuga, is also pursuing the one he loves. Suddenly, he is ambushed by an armored, headless demon, who turns out to be one of his former subordinates, Duke Dolahan. The Duke is concerned to see Yuki without his horns and wings, and informs him that two of his other subordinates, Harpy Happines and Pixie Schick, have also been searching tirelessly for him all this time. Yuki is touched by his subordinates' efforts, realizing he meant more to them than he ever thought. His subordinates line up, expressing their concern that he won't be able to handle the real world due to his unpredictable nature. Yuki tells them about his journey, about meeting a human girl with whom he has become completely smitten. Instead of letting him pursue his brave romance, his subordinates are too curious and decide to transform into humans with bizarre appearances. But Happiness has the hardest time, as she has to pluck out her own distinctive features. The brave demon troop marches to Cecilia's mansion without any regrets. But they are met by an angry nun who discovers that Happines had endured pain during her transformation. The subordinates quickly grow fond of Cecilia as she is genuinely kind and caring towards them. Duke Dolahan reminisces about when he first met Yuki and doesn't hesitate to tell all the embarrassing stories about him, leaving Yuki flustered. Schick and Happiness suddenly disappear, forcing Yuki to go look for them. He eventually finds Happines in a maid outfit and Schick resting in the lap of Cecilia's mother. They spend a sweet afternoon together before heading back. The next day, Happiness is hired as a maid in Cecilia's house, because after the A-rank adventurer Sophia taught her a few things, she became quite suited for the job. When Yuki meets Cecilia again, she suggests that he and his subordinates accompany her on a shopping trip. The whole group disguises themselves, though not very well, by simply wearing glasses. While strolling through the small shops, they are recognized by the mage and Yuki's rival, Yuga. Mikana, also unwilling to give up on her love, decides to team up with Yuki to distract their respective love interests, hoping to win their hearts. In the shop where Yuga and Cecilia are trying on clothes, the two lovelorn spies watch as Yuga excitedly helps his crush try on different outfits. Suddenly, Cecilia's glasses fall off, causing everyone around to turn and stare at her. The crowd's attention forces the group to make a quick exit to avoid social formalities, and by the next day, they are all exhausted. Cecilia falls ill, as the interactions from the previous day were too much for her to handle. She's disappointed that they couldn't spend the whole day together as she'd hoped, and promises to make it up with another date. Yuki gets so excited that he starts acting strangely, which annoys Sophia so much that she has to kick him out. After Cecilia recovers, Yuki returns to the guild. Kramen, the man in charge, is in a cheerful mood and won't stop gushing about how well his wife has been treating him lately. Raven, Yuki's only friend, shows up without a word, as usual. Even though neither of them has many friends, Yuki assumes that Raven wants to go on a quest together. On the way into the forest, Raven suddenly reveals that all he wanted was to talk with Yuki. But Yuki, being the talkative one, suggests they quickly defeat the demon and then grab a bite to eat so they can chat more comfortably. They take down the demon with ease, turning the moment into a special memory, as it's the first time either of them has completed a quest with a friend. Afterward, they go out to eat, with Raven in his hat and glasses for a disguise, of course. Yuki's shy friend confesses that he's fallen for someone, but is too timid to approach them. This infuriates the extroverted Yuki, who feels his friend is way too handsome to be worrying about such things. Yuki immediately starts cheering Raven on, giving him a confidence boost so he can confess his feelings. A little later, they head out, with Yuki ready to be his friend's supportive wingman. But when he realizes they are heading towards Cecilia's house, Yuki starts to worry that Raven might confess to the very same person he's pursuing. Even so, he waits outside until Raven returns. Raven emerges from the mansion with slumped shoulders, defeated and dejected after being rejected. A curious Duke Dolahan asks who Raven confessed to, and is surprised to learn it was none other than Happines. The Duke also shares his own story, about how Happines was always hunted by humans because of her beauty. Everyone decides to meet with Raven to hear his side of the story. The Duke and Raven face off, one wanting to protect a friend while the other wants to express his love. This tense exchange took a touching turn as the two cooperated, helping Raven overcome his fear and take a step toward befriending his crush. After this initial success, Raven invited the Duke to join the Night Squad, leaving Shik and Yuki living together. That day's mission was to investigate the village of Dagas. Yuki, along with Shik and Cecilia, traveled there by carriage. Cecilia had work to do, and Yuki volunteered to help. And of course, Shik, despite his young age, didn't want to be left behind either. The place was desolate due to recent attacks by mountain bandits. Cecilia ordered everyone to gather, including the injured and the sick. And the three of them quickly got to work. Shik distributed herbs to the villagers while Yuki and Cecilia used magic to heal them. Noticing Cecilia was running out of mana, Yuki gently put her to sleep so she could recover. Cecilia was angry at first, but she softened after hearing him express his concern. The villagers told them about a little girl living on the outskirts who was very ill. The three of them went to visit the girl, and after drinking an herbal concoction made by Shik, her condition gradually improved. She told them about her illness and the god she often prayed to, believing it was this god who helped her sleep and protected her. They went to the shrine-like place the girl mentioned, where a demon sat receiving her prayers. The three quickly realized the girl was on the verge of starting a demon cult. Tiru and Cecilia stood outside the shrine as the boys realized the creature was a gargoyle. They were suddenly attacked. However, the small and slender Shik took him down with a single kick. The gargoyle began to tell his story. He had been stolen from his original home by a group of mountain bandits and was left with nowhere to go. So he decided to stay at the shrine, cleaning it up and making it his home. The little girl would often come to pray, and he would do anything to protect her. Though suspicious at first, the gargoyle then compared himself to Yuki, saying they both just followed the person they cared about. In the end, Yuki's group decided not to harm him and returned to the village. After Tiru was healed and fast asleep, the villagers told them more about the strange little girl who was shunned by the community for praying before a demon statue. After learning the true identity of the god the girl worshipped, Cecilia asked about his intentions and entrusted Tiru's safety to him. It turned out he wasn't the monster the villagers suspected, but just a demon god who wanted to protect his believers. The sun was setting, but Captain Yuki, Cecilia, and Shik were still at Tiru's house. Time dragged on as Tiru told endless stories about her guardian god, the demon gargoyle she was obsessed with. In her excitement, Tiru grabbed Shik's hand, begging him to stay and listen to more stories about her guardian. Shik started to cry, glancing at Yuki for help, but Tiru had clearly chosen the wrong person to confide in. This boy was only interested in eating and sleeping. Suddenly, Tiru invited both Yuki and Cecilia into the conversation. Thinking fast, Yuki made the excuse that they had an early start tomorrow, so the two of them had to leave. Of course, he didn't actually ask Tiru to stop, as he was eager for some private time with Cecilia. Ignoring Shik's pleas for help, Yuki and Cecilia said goodbye to Tiru, promising to be back before dinner the next day. They stepped out under a starry sky and a full moon. Cecilia asked Yuki if Shik would be all right on his own, and Yuki reassured her, claiming he left Shik behind because Tiru looked so happy. Of course, he was pretending to have no ulterior motives, but the truth came out when he took Cecilia's hand. Pulling her closer, Yuki made the excuse that it was dark and she needed to be careful. Cecilia blushed slightly, thanking her thoughtful captain, but she wasn't completely oblivious to his ploys and just smiled to herself. Holding hands, the two walked through the dark forest like a simple, happy couple and returned to get a good night's sleep and recover their strength. But their brief peace was shattered when Yuki was awoken by the villagers' screams. The mountain bandits were attacking in the dead of night. Yuki leaped out of bed at the sound of an old man's cry for help. And surprisingly, Shik had already managed to escape from Tiru and had snuck back to sleep. Yuki yelled for Shik to wake up, but the boy just groaned, begging for 5 more minutes. The clash between the villagers and the bandits was fierce, with the bandits having the upper hand. Several people were seriously injured and blood had been spilled. Yuki quickly threw on his armor as Cecilia arrived, ready to provide support. The villagers, despite suffering numerous head wounds, were still trying to fight back. Just when it seemed they were about to be overrun, Yuki's team of 3 arrived. As captain, Yuki ordered Shik to attack, with Cecilia providing support. The sleepy-looking Shik suddenly snapped awake at Yuki's command, as if he'd become a completely different person. His small frame made him unbelievably agile, leaping over enemies before they could even turn around. In an instant, he landed a powerful kick to a bandit's head, knocking him unconscious. Quick as lightning, Schick drew his knife and took down 3 more at once, turning their laughter into screams. Cecilia couldn't believe her eyes. Was this the same kid who was crying to be saved from Tiru just a few hours ago? But Yuki was calm, unsurprised, having seen this side of Schick many times. He explained to Cecilia that Schick knew how to use his small stature to throw enemies off balance, the pride evident in his voice for his former subordinate. After a few minutes passed, Yuki decided it was time for them to join the fray. Seeing Cecilia nearby, he decided against using any large-scale magic, instead using a storm spell to push back the surrounding enemies and protect her. Everything seemed to be going smoothly until Yuki saw smoke rising from Tiru's house. Schick realized that perhaps he shouldn't have left the girl's house at all. Yuki ordered Schick to get there immediately, and he quickly complied. Meanwhile, Yuki single-handedly took down all the remaining bandits without getting a scratch. He breathed a sigh of relief seeing the villagers celebrate. However, a knot of worry formed in his stomach, as Schick still hadn't returned. Doubts began to creep into Yuki's mind. Though he trusted Schick's fighting skills, he worried that the boy might have been overcome by the bandits at Tiru's house. His unease grew, and without another word, Yuki dashed into the forest with a worried expression. In the middle of the forest, he stumbled upon Schick and Tiru. Yuki's eyes widened in disbelief at the scene before him. Tiru was weeping uncontrollably, and Schick was fighting back tears, standing next to the lifeless body of the gargoyle, the guardian god she adored. Its body was covered in blood. Though holding himself together, Schick stood firm in a fighting stance, facing a strange enemy. This mysterious man exuded a terrifying aura and held a blood-stained sword, clearly the one who had killed the gargoyle. Ignoring Schick, the man turned to Yuki and Cecilia and asked if they were from the village. But looking closely at their attire, he realized they weren't just ordinary people, but prominent figures in the village. Schick immediately cut him off with an attack, but the enemy, who seemed bored, mercilessly kicked Schick, sending him flying, making him crash into a wall. Even so, Schick got back up, his eyes filled with rage, showing that this confrontation had been going on for some time. Before Schick could charge in again, Yuki held him back and told him to calm down. Yuki asked Schick what had happened, and Schick explained that the gargoyle had been trying to protect Tiru from some bandits when this man suddenly attacked him from behind. The enemy laughed out loud, declaring that he'd helped them by killing the monster gargoyle. Then he started mocking Schick for crying. But this time, Yuki couldn't stand it anymore and attacked him. However, Yuki's magic vanished the moment it made contact with the killer. Cecilia told Yuki to back off, then explained that based on this guy's identity, Yuki wouldn't be able to fight him. She revealed that the killer was Mira from the Garris Empire, and the sword in his hand was an artificial magic eater, capable of absorbing magic. This meant magic users like Yuki stood no chance at all. What caught Yuki's attention even more was the existence of other heroes. Cecilia explained that other nations also had their own chosen heroes, and the bad news was that Mira's artificial sword was a replica of the holy magic sword, so it possessed many special abilities. However, their conversation was cut short when Mira challenged them to step up and fight him, wanting to get things over with quickly. Yuki tried to explain to Mira that the gargoyle he'd just killed was only trying to help a human, but Cecilia reminded him that Mira had none of the dignity of a hero. His reasoning was that all heroes have the right to kill monsters, and therefore he intended to exterminate them all. Although the gargoyle had his wings severed and had lost an arm, he was still alive. Mira, with a cold demeanor, advanced on the gargoyle, viewing him as a monster that needed to be put down. Tiru stood in his way and begged him to stop. Cecilia reminded Mira that if someone from the Garris Empire were to harm a citizen of the Clarinet Kingdom, it would lead to war. But it was clear Mira couldn't care less about starting a war. He turned his attention to Cecilia, but before he could lay a hand on her, Yuki immediately intervened. After hurting Tiru and injuring Schick, Mira now had the nerve to point his sword at Yuki's waifu, something unforgivable. A confident smirk appeared on Yuki's face as he promised to show Mira a taste of hell. But the problem was, magic didn't work on this guy. Yuki unleashed a storm of attacks on his opponent, but as expected, they were completely useless, easily absorbed by Mira's sword. Now it was Mira's turn to counterattack, and although Yuki blocked the blow quite easily, he realized that if the fight dragged on, Cecilia would be in danger. Yuki erupted with a massive amount of magic which took Mira a moment to fully absorb. While he was occupied, Yuki launched a surprise attack from an unexpected angle, securing a temporary victory, a flashy display that made even Cecilia shake her head. As they were bandaging Shik's wounds, Mira suddenly reappeared and launched a spear toward the gargoyle. But instead of hitting the gargoyle, the spear struck Teru, who had rushed forward to protect her guardian. Yuki immediately used his maximum speed to try and stop the spear. But he wasn't fast enough. Teru collapsed from the powerful impact. The gargoyle, stunned, asked why she was willing to sacrifice herself for him. Teru simply replied that he had protected her many times as a guardian, and she just wanted to protect him for once. Unfortunately, Mira was getting back up, partially recovered, thanks to a magic staff that made him unable to hold back. Mira unleashed a spell that rained thousands of arrows down on Cecilia. Yuki immediately protected her, but that allowed Mira to escape. They both apologized to each other for failing to complete their mission. Yuki criticized himself for becoming complacent due to his endless magical power. In a low voice, he asked Cecilia if anyone lived in the area, and when she confirmed it was a remote area, Yuki decided not to hold back anymore. He transformed into his demon form, a horn sprouting from his forehead and large wings appearing. The sight made Cecilia shudder, her eyes wide with shock. Yuki vowed to hunt down Mira and beat him to a pulp. Although his form looked far different from the boy Cecilia knew, he turned back to reassure her, promising that his consciousness was intact and that he was still the same person she knew. He gave her a smile before flying off, leaving Cecilia stunned into silence. Yuki wrapped a scarf around his face and went full speed, and soon enough he confronted his enemy once more, but this time things would be different. Mira's face was etched with fear as he saw a true demon standing before him. Yuki declared that he would be punished for the crime of severing his subordinate's wings. Mira, not recognizing Yuki, was initially confident and tried to attack. But with just a single blow from Yuki, he was sent coughing up blood. What troubled Mira was that if the Demon King was dead, how could such a powerful demon still exist? Giving Mira no time to think, Yuki lifted him into the sky and threw him into a river, declaring that he wasn't worthy of dying by his hand. Utterly humiliated, Mira swore he would return for revenge before drifting down the river toward the Garris kingdom, his homeland. Although Yuki felt he might return to cause trouble, he didn't end Mira's life, perhaps due to his own soft-hearted nature. After returning to his normal form, Yuki realized his horns and wings were still there. He started back towards Cecilia, wondering how difficult it would be to get rid of them. When he returned, he noticed the worry in Cecilia's eyes after she saw his demonic form. Yuki promised Cecilia that he would never turn into a demon again and would live as a human. Fortunately, they managed to save Teru with healing magic, and the gargoyle held the little girl's hand the entire time. Shik was still depressed, likely from the crushing feeling of defeat after his battle with Mira. Now that their work was done, the group decided to leave Teru's village. When they went inside to say their goodbyes, they were surprised to find Teru begging them to take her and the gargoyle to the city of Manurva to find a cure for its lost wing and arm. Yuki immediately came up with a plan, turning the gargoyle into a Buddha statue so they could carry it without arousing suspicion. When the group arrived in the city of Manurva, Yuki met up with Duke Dolahan and Happines again. Both of them seemed ready to demand justice for Shik, who had been brought to tears. Yuki was surprised, wondering how they knew about this, and found out that Shik, in his depression, had poured his heart out. A man who was once strong, fast, and resilient was now suffering the humiliation of a devastating defeat. It was clear Shik wouldn't easily get over this failure, and the Duke and Happines had looks of pure rage, determined to hunt down the attacker immediately. Yuki calmed them down, explaining that he had already thrown Mira into the river. They both seemed disappointed, as they had hoped their captain would have at least chopped him up, tied rocks to him, and dropped him in the sea. Whatever happened to Mira in the river was no longer Yuki's concern. Yuki focused on finding a way to lift Shik's spirits. Thinking about how fond Shik was of Cecilia, Yuki thought that perhaps she could help cheer him up. Meanwhile, the Duke's and Happiness's gazes suddenly fell upon the Buddha statue sitting on the table, and they started mocking it with every insult they could think of. When it could no longer stand it, the gargoyle revealed its true form, causing both of them to draw their swords in a misunderstanding. Yuki quickly explained the situation, and after understanding what was going on, they quickly bonded with the gargoyle, even giving each other nicknames. But it wasn't long before the head butler appeared, pulling Happines out of the room to begin her training session. Before leaving the room to train Happines, the butler remarked that Yuki's Buddha statue was in poor taste. Poor Buddha wasn't getting any love at all. Afterward, Yuki decided to stop by the guild and met the receptionist, and he was surprised to learn that Kramen was now the guild's assistant manager. The receptionist said that although Kramen received quite a few complaints, he was still doing his job pretty well. During the Heroes Parade, Kramen even gave all the staff a vacation and managed the guild by himself for 3 consecutive days. Right around the time Yuki had first arrived in Manurva, Yuki asked where Kramen was now, and was shocked to find out he was in the hospital after a fight with his wife. Curious, Yuki went to visit Kramen, eager to hear the story like a 5-year-old child. It turned out Kramen had procrastinated for too long on choosing an anniversary gift, which angered his wife. However, everything was fine now, and she was on her way to pick him up from the hospital. What surprised Yuki the most was that Kramen's wife was none other than Sophia, who was usually cold and aloof. Finding this story even more interesting, Yuki asked Kramen to tell him about their romance when they were younger. Kramen told a story about how he used to be a muscular alcoholic. One day, Sophia approached him in a bar and suggested they team up. He tried to hit on her, but ended up getting beaten to a pulp. Realizing her strength, he accepted her offer, and the two quickly became an invincible duo known as the Langurist couple. Gradually, Kramen developed feelings for Sophia, and although he didn't initially plan to confess, he proposed to her during dinner. She said yes, but then beat him up again when he asked her to quit being an adventurer. Just then, Sophia walked into the room, bringing the story to an abrupt halt, leaving Yuki feeling both envious and lonely. Back home, Yuki transformed the gargoyle statue from a Buddha into a sphinx. He lay in bed, tossing and turning as he thought about Cecilia. Feeling down, he kept changing the gargoyle statue's form just for fun. Suddenly, Cecilia and Happiness knocked on the door. Yuki jumped for joy when he saw Cecilia, but was a little disappointed to realize she wasn't alone. They asked Yuki if he was busy so the group could hang out. Happiness wondered about the gargoyle's Buddha statue, and Yuki pointed to the brand new Sphinx sitting in the middle of the room. As usual, Yuki received another harsh rejection when his work of art was turned down once again. Cecilia revealed that Shik had been crying non-stop until she held him, after which he collapsed from exhaustion and was taken to the mansion to rest. Hearing that Shik was better, Yuki felt relieved and grew even fonder of Cecilia for her kindness. Afterward, Yuki excitedly mentioned that Kramen and Sophia were married. Cecilia revealed that her mother had once told her a story about them, and Yuki, a huge fan of love stories, listened with great interest. However, it turned out to be a sappy romance, making Yuki want to pull his hair out over his own loneliness. When the story ended, Cecilia invited Yuki to visit Clarence Palace with her. Shik was coming along too, and despite being a little disappointed about not being alone with Cecilia, Yuki was still happy that Shik was no longer depressed. The reason for their visit was related to Mira. The officials found it hard to believe that people as strong as Shik and Cecilia couldn't defeat Mira, so they were somewhat suspicious. Yuki and Cecilia told Shik to be on his best behavior in front of the king of Clarence County. When they met the king, he seemed quite friendly. Apparently, he had been fighting in battles since he was 15 and ascended to the throne at just 25. Shik, half asleep, was bowing before the king, when suddenly the king ordered his aide Sylvia to attack Shik to test his abilities. Shik dodged swiftly, convincing the king that all three were very skilled and would be valuable assets to the kingdom. He promised to reward them handsomely. Hearing about a reward, only one thing popped into Yuki's mind. He wanted a date with Cecilia. The problem was, he had just said that out loud in front of the king. Cecilia's face turned beet red, and she nearly fainted from embarrassment. Sylvia attacked Yuki for this crude act, but the king stopped her, laughing at his audacity. Shik innocently asked for candy as his reward, while Cecilia's blazing red eyes showed she was furious with Yuki. She coldly demanded that he come to her house to see her privately. Normally, Yuki would be thrilled by such an invitation, but now he feared for his life. Fortunately, Cecilia's mother arrived just in time, and she seemed to be quite fond of Yuki and his determination to impress Cecilia. However, due to Yuki's behavior in front of the king, Cecilia's mother forbade him from seeing her daughter for a month. However, after Cecilia and Yuki pleaded desperately, she reduced the punishment to half a month. But she made Yuki promise one thing. When he returned, he had to confess his feelings properly and become a gentleman. The very first day away from Cecilia, Yuki dreamt of kissing her and proposing. Realizing he couldn't bear even half a month without seeing her, he sought out Raven for advice on love. While wandering together, Yuki and Raven stumbled upon a beautiful statue, and this encounter quickly led to differing viewpoints. Yuki couldn't help but express his amazement at the world's strangeness, making Raven suspicious and wondering if he had accidentally said something wrong. But to Raven's surprise, Yuki quickly changed the subject and stressed his need for romantic advice. Raven, humble and unsure of his own romantic abilities, assured Yuki he could confide in him, his eyes hiding a curious mischief. Yuki told Raven about the first time he met Cecilia, admitting that his lack of attention had led to an inappropriate comment that got him scolded. But during their conversation, a sudden idea struck him: an apology gift. Recalling the time he couldn't buy a necklace for Cecilia because the shop was too crowded, Yuki shared the story of his previous outing when the gift slipped through his fingers. He enthusiastically proposed this gift as the perfect solution to his current predicament. Lost in thought, Raven realized that Yuki had already had a chance to go on a date with the girl of his dreams, while his own relationship had barely progressed. To close the gap, Yuki suggested they both buy gifts for the ones they secretly admired. He explained that even if Happiness didn't show it, she would surely appreciate a thoughtful present. Raven decided to buy Happiness a gift, but Yuki reminded him they needed a reason to see her. And so they began a shopping adventure, stopping in front of a small, charming shop that caught both their eyes. Raven leaned down and whispered in Yuki's ear, telling him they should leave immediately, which confused Yuki. Refusing to be swayed, Yuki was determined to stay and look around. Their presence soon caught the attention of the shopkeeper, who curiously approached them. Raven discreetly held out a piece of paper with the word hairpin written on it, his means of communication since he couldn't speak loudly. Understanding the situation, the shopkeeper led them to the exact item they were looking for. And there before them were the perfect gifts they both needed. Just as they stepped out of the store, they unexpectedly ran into Makana. She raised an eyebrow, questioning their presence there. Quickly, they both reassured her that they were simply buying gifts, trying to dispel any suspicion. Makana couldn't help but show her disbelief at the thought of a swordsman like Raven being in love. However, the sound of Makana's growling stomach abruptly ended the conversation, revealing her true motive. She was starving. Without hesitation, Makana dragged them both to a nearby restaurant. With a desperate look in his eyes, Yuki whispered to Raven, hastily plotting their escape. The plan was simple yet bold. Eat continuously without stopping to avoid having to talk. But just when they thought they had succeeded, Makana suddenly brought up a story about Cecilia. Unable to contain his curiosity, Yuki ruined the plan by interrupting Makana with a barrage of questions. Caught up in her memories, Makana began to recount the pranks Yuga had played on the Saintus. Raven, unable to hide his envy, commented that Yuga was lucky to have such interesting situations, which annoyed Yuki. They continued to delve into stories about Yuga, recalling the times he had unintentionally formed unnecessary relationships, hindering their noble mission. This was also a valiant effort to redirect the conversation, avoiding any mention of their own personal love lives. They succeeded in diverting Mikona's attention, and she began to tell a captivating story, leading to a shocking revelation. The victory against the Demon King wasn't thanks to a famous hero, but to a low-level demon in the Demon King's castle. Yuki, chuckling to himself, guessed the Demon King never saw that coming. It must have been like getting a pie unexpectedly thrown in his face. The atmosphere in the room grew tense as Mikona recounted the fierce battles they had endured in the Demon King's castle. Each fight brought them face to face with death, their lives hanging by a thread. But what tormented Mikona the most was the fact that their survival was only possible thanks to the intervention of an astonishingly powerful demon. Her voice trembled as she recalled the moments they fell into critical situations, their bodies exhausted and covered in injuries. And it was in those desperate moments that the demon would appear, wielding extraordinary power, healing their wounds and giving them the chance to fight on. Although the demon's help was undeniable, Mikona couldn't shake the feeling that it helped them only out of pity for their feeble attempts to win. This reliance on the demon's pity gradually broke Mikona's spirit. She revealed that every encounter with that demon was a painful reminder of how insignificant they were before the terrifying power it possessed. The demon constantly emphasized the power gap between them, as if they were nothing more than toys in its game. What stunned everyone the most was when Mikona revealed the condition the demon had set for them to survive and continue their journey. They had to abandon Cecilia, their beloved saint, and continue on without her. It was a cruel condition, striking at the very core of the team's purpose and bond. O'Connor admitted that she had convinced everyone to accept this condition, but Raven expressed his disappointment, questioning if it would have been acceptable had Cecilia died. Yuki tried to justify his actions, revealing that at the time he just wanted to get closer to Cecilia, and that's why he had proposed the condition. Mikona continued to recount the details of what happened next, sharing that they once thought they understood the enemy's strength and were prepared for victory. However, the demon's appearance shattered that confidence. Makana revealed that the reason they couldn't allow themselves to be defeated by an unarmed demon was to uphold the hero party's prestige and protect the IGA organization's reputation. As their failure dragged on for a whole month, the excuses in their report started to lose their credibility. In that decisive moment, the demon offered an alternative solution. Makana confessed that for the good of the group, she was forced to accept the demon's offer. She explained that she had made this difficult decision for the team's sake, even if it meant carrying the burden of regret and guilt. After defeating the Demon King, Mikana rushed to the room where they had left Cecilia, despite her exhausted body. She expressed her shame and apologized for only now being able to reveal the truth. Mikana admitted that she couldn't tell Cecilia the whole story, and had instead been drowning in guilt and suppression, spurred on by Yuga's encouragement. She explained that her true purpose was to protect Yuga, the childhood friend she secretly loved. After finishing her story, Mikana left, leaving Yuki and Raven stunned by what they had just heard. The 2-week wait finally came to an end, and Yuki was eager to see Cecilia again. However, a girl arrived with a message from Cecilia, asking Yuki to come to the mansion at noon the next day. Thanking the girl, Yuki invited her inside and mentioned that he planned to take a walk around the city. While in the city, Yuki heard about a shop famous for its delicious pastries and decided to stop by. Upon entering, he was surprised to be greeted by a muscular man. The man explained that his sister was sick, so he was running the shop for the day and had accidentally crushed some pastries by using too much strength. Through the way he cared for his customers, Yuki could see the man had a kind heart. While there, Yuki bought some food for a crying child. But the peaceful atmosphere quickly changed when a thief suddenly snatched the bag of items from Yuki's hand. Determined to get back what was stolen, Yuki quickly gave chase and took down the thief with a powerful kick. However, Yuki was shocked to realize the thief was Yuga, who then accused him of being the thief. Despite Yuki's attempts to clear up the misunderstanding, Yuga's rage escalated as he recklessly attacked Yuki with his sword. Yuki found himself in a heated argument with a stubborn guard who refused to believe his wallet had been stolen, while Yuga easily painted him as the villain in the situation. Frustration boiled inside Yuki as he thought about how Yuga had turned him into the culprit. Just as the tension reached its peak, a figure stepped out from the shadows. It was none other than Commander Raven, the city's renowned hero. Raven stepped forward holding a piece of paper that recorded what had actually happened. Yuki's eyes widened in relief as he realized Raven had come to help him. Gratitude filled him, realizing that without Raven, he would have been stuck in this bizarre situation forever. With an understanding smile, Raven assured Yuki that he would remind Yuga to be more careful next time. Mustering his courage, Yuki asked if there was a way to communicate with the other heroes. To his surprise, Raven nodded in agreement, explaining that he often used handwritten messages during the hero party's meetings. Yuki found the reasoning behind it all to be strange, yet convincing. What was surprising was the failure to investigate Cecilia's son for activities that might have led to these grave misunderstandings, especially after his wallet was stolen by a human, causing him to be mistaken for the perpetrator. With Raven's message for Yuga already written down, Yuki was determined to find Yuga and resolve the issue once and for all. Yuki confronted the Duke about his recent actions, but only received a denial from the guards. The Duke asserted that in public he would only address Raven as Commander Raven. Just then, Irene entered and pulled the Duke away for training, leaving Yuki to ponder the possibility of elves becoming knights. While Yuki was lost in thought about the world's mysteries, Yuga appeared majestically. The two quickly fell into a pleasant conversation, reminiscing about their previous meeting before Yuki's walk with Cecilia. With the intention of making amends, Yuki suggested they stop by a nearby restaurant known for its excellent food. Upon entering the restaurant, Yuki felt a sense of familiarity, realizing it was the same one Mikana had once recommended. Unable to hide their admiration for the restaurant's perfect organization and spacious interior, they quickly ordered their food. Yuki took this opportunity to apologize for his earlier haste and misunderstanding. Yuga, ever the forgiving friend, reassured Yuki that there was nothing to worry about. But deep down, Yuga still felt guilty, and wondered how a hero like him could have made such a mistake. To comfort Yuga, Yuki shared some advice, telling him to let go of the burden on his shoulders. As the conversation grew more cheerful, Yuga couldn't contain his curiosity and asked about the relationship between Yuki and Cecilia. Yuki calmly replied that they were just good friends, which greatly surprised Yuga. The surprises didn't stop there, as Yuki revealed that even Raven was a friend of his. Yuga, taken aback by this, sought Yuki's advice on friendship, admitting that he didn't have many friends and wanted to understand its meaning better. An intense burst of emotion rose in Yuki as he began to speak about Makana's role in the recent events. Yuga was surprised to realize that Yuki knew about these hidden details. Yuki explained that Makana had been tormented by guilt and often cried over her actions. An argument broke out between them, with Yuga insisting that it was Makana who had abandoned Cecilia from the start. But Yuki countered, stressing that Makana's motives came from the deep care she had for Yuga. Gradually, Yuga realized that he had been unfairly blaming Makana, while completely ignoring his own responsibility in the whole affair. This awakening brought Yuga to tears as he recognized his own selfishness and lack of responsibility. In a warm moment, Yuki comforted Yuga, reminding him that failure is a natural part of life, and that he shouldn't give up or evade his responsibilities. Through their heartfelt conversation, Yuga came to realize the incredible support Makana had given him since childhood. He understood that Mikana's scolding was just an expression of her deep concern and their close bond. Determined to make amends, Yuga decided to apologize to Mikana, but he couldn't muster the courage to face her alone. So he turned to Yuki for support. Yuki agreed to accompany Yuga on this journey of atonement, emphasizing the importance of friendship and mutual support. In his haste, Yuga unexpectedly bumped into Yuki. A humorous moment as the two came face to face by chance and finally reintroduced themselves properly. Full of determination, Yuga barged into Makana's house without even knocking. But what he didn't expect was the surprising sight before him. Makana, semi-nude, stunned by Yuga's sudden appearance. Without waiting another moment, Yuga launched into a repentant speech, admitting his past selfishness and apologizing for treating Mikana poorly. However, despite his newfound enlightenment, he still acted rather awkwardly. To atone for his actions, Yuga even asked Makana to scold him. But under the circumstances, she was already furious at him for barging in while she was changing, so a scolding was already on the agenda. Meanwhile, Yuki, growing weary of the dramatic scene unfolding before him, wisely decided to leave the chaos. He chose to go for a walk with Teru, and she happily agreed to join, clearly also wanting a temporary escape from the tense situation. The two of them strolled through the market, and it seemed fate had another interesting twist in store. A girl was giving out free cakes to everyone because her muscular brother had accidentally smashed a customer's cake. Life is full of unexpected situations, and that brawny man was none other than Beastman. Yuki was quickly drawn into a conversation with this unique character. Just when he thought his day couldn't get any weirder, suddenly a man approached and apologized to Yuki for the trouble his young master had caused the other day. As a form of compensation, the man gave Yuki a small gift bag. Curious, Yuki opened it and was pleasantly surprised to find fragrant grilled meat skewers inside. Awesome! But the surprises weren't over yet. On his way, Yuki happened to run into Hapince again, and in her excitement, she led him to her workplace, which was also where he hoped to meet Cecilia again. The reunion after half a month of waiting made them both feel as though a whole year had passed. Filled with the joy of love, Yuki didn't come empty-handed and gave Cecilia the free food he had received from the market. He confessed that both gifts were freebies, which made Cecilia laugh, brightening the mood between them. As they chatted, Cecilia prepared more cake for them to enjoy. Yuki savored the delicious cake and endlessly thanked Cecilia for her cooking skills. Though he was once the demon king in a castle, Yuki now felt happy because he had found a reason to live. And that reason was Cecilia. Just as their conversation was getting deep, the dynamic duo of Yuga and Mikana suddenly appeared to see Cecilia. Yuga, with great courage, stepped forward to offer his sincerest apology to Cecilia. But before he could finish his sentence, smack! A powerful slap from Makana landed across Yuga's face, creating a dramatic turn of events. Undeterred, Yuga mustered his courage once more, begging Cecilia to unleash all her anger on him, as if a good scolding could cleanse his soul. But Makana, realizing the importance of voicing her own remorse, took a deep breath and apologized herself. Makana poured her heart out, trying to express her deep regret, but Cecilia, ever the wonderful friend, didn't let her suffer a moment longer. She cut Makana off, opening her arms to accept the apology, metaphorically of course. Why prolong the agony when forgiveness is just a hug away? Just then, Yuki stepped in like a well-timed savior, gently giving Cecilia the hair clip he had prepared earlier. The hair clip seemed as if it were made for Cecilia, complementing her beauty with stunning perfection. Even Makana couldn't help but praise her, admitting that Cecilia looked truly gorgeous with the hair clip. Clearly, Yuki's fashion sense was not to be underestimated. In this tender moment, Cecilia turned to Yuki and sincerely expressed her gratitude for his intervention in the Makana and Yuga saga. Yuki, ever the humble one, confessed that he couldn't bear the thought of their relationship falling apart. Both Cecilia and Yuki realized the profound impact they had on each other's lives. They exchanged a look full of happiness, hoping this newfound bond would continue to blossom. Cecilia, an optimist, entrusted her heart to Yuki, knowing he would always be there to care for and protect her. Yuki, in a tense moment, clutched the necklace he planned to give Cecilia. He realized the stress and importance of the moment, stepping outside to take a deep breath as if anxiety were clinging to him, making it hard to think straight. Meanwhile, Yuga, unable to contain his excitement, urged Makana to investigate inside Cecilia's castle. Seeing Yuki was distracted, Mikana gave him a light slap to bring him back to reality, reminding him that they needed to focus on the task at hand. Yuki, his heart pounding, apologized to Cecilia as they both entered the castle. With courage, Yuki approached Cecilia, his sweaty hands trembling as he tried to touch hers. The air was thick with tension, and Yuki couldn't stop overthinking. He was afraid that Cecilia might not like the gift, the fear of rejection clinging to his mind like a thorn, making it impossible for him to think clearly. While Cecilia waited patiently in the hallway, Yuki struggled with the turmoil in his heart. Finally, he steeled himself, took a deep breath, and walked towards Cecilia again. She stood there, seemingly aware of what he was about to do. But just as he was about to give her the long-awaited gift, fear overwhelmed him, and Yuki quickly ran away, unable to control his anxiety. Yuki decided to take Cecilia to a secret place within the mansion. His curiosity piqued when he overheard a conversation from a nearby room. Holding his breath, Yuki listened intently and discovered some shocking news. Kramen and Sophia had just welcomed a child into the world. Sophia, determined to protect her daughter from Kramen's influence, had taken on the noble task of raising the girl herself. Just as Yuki was on the verge of a major discovery, danger suddenly appeared. He grabbed Cecilia's slender hand, his heart pounding with adrenaline, and the two of them dashed through the mansion's confusing, maze-like corridors, trying to evade their pursuers. Eventually, exhaustion caught up with Cecilia, her voice tinged with weariness as she asked about Yuki's intentions in this dangerous mansion. With sincerity and determination, Yuki confessed that he had found a quiet place, a paradise just for the two of them. A glimmer of hope in his eyes, Yuki gave Cecilia a precious necklace, a symbol of his unwavering affection. He recounted the time she couldn't buy the necklace she wanted because of a troublemaker in the shop. But now, he proudly told her that he had gotten the gift, and his feelings for her were unshakable. Cecilia, filled with joy and with her eyes shining, expressed her deep gratitude and promised to cherish the necklace. This happy moment, however, was quickly shattered when Yuga suddenly burst into the room, his voice full of displeasure at seeing Yuki and Cecilia together with no one else around. The two decided to leave the mansion and walk together into the splendid garden, where the twilight still lingered, creating a peaceful atmosphere. Yuki, a young man on a quest to win the love of his life, now saw the obstacles blocking his path clearly, so he decided to go to the guild to find answers. Yuki angrily demanded why the high-level quest he completed didn't yield worthy rewards while he was still stuck at B rank in the MSI. Kramen argued that Yuki's current position was already very good, since he had only registered as an adventurer half a year ago. Yuki, in his human form, argued that he needed to be promoted faster to achieve a stable life. For Kramen, this meant more high-level quests and more work, something he wasn't enthusiastic about. In the end, Yuki's case was settled when Kramen lazily explained that getting promoted too early could cause trouble, and that advancing quickly wasn't always the wisest choice. Yuki walked home in disappointment, his plan for an early stable life delayed once again. The gargoyle was still in its strange, hat-like form, resting on the table. The two of them had a brief conversation before the gargoyle sadly revealed the true extent of its collapse. Deep cracks ran all over its body, an arm was missing, and its wings had been torn away. The temple's guardian deity confessed that he had taken a heavy blow in the last battle, and seemed unable to recover normally. With only 5 days left to live, and despite his weakened state, the gargoyle was still worried about Tiru and her declining health. He asked Yuki to take care of Tiru after he was gone. But Yuki, not one to easily accept his friend's fate, immediately stood tall, striking a powerful pose in the middle of the room, declaring that he would commit to finding a cure for the injured gargoyle no matter how difficult it was. Yuki decided that the best person to ask for advice on demon-related matters was Duke Dolahan, So he went to visit him at the knight's headquarters. Now that he no longer had wings, walking had become Yuki's least favorite activity. As soon as he arrived, he flopped down on a sofa, waiting for his friend to finish his administrative duties as a noble knight. A rather frail-looking female knight approached Yuki, introducing herself as Irene. She asked about the relationship between Yuki and the Duke, noting that they seemed very close. Furthermore, she was curious why a knight as talented as the Duke would call Yuki captain. Yuki saw this as an opportunity to tease Irene, who seemed quite gullible. He recounted their past in a mysterious and frightening way, making the story more compelling. Just then, the Duke walked in and quickly dismissed Yuki's words, insisting it was just a joke. The name Captain was just a playful nickname he had for his friend. Irene left them alone to talk. And Yuki didn't beat around the bush, getting straight to the point. Yuki explained the Gargoyle situation and asked for the Duke's help in finding a timely cure. Loyal to his role as a subordinate, the Duke did not disappoint him. The solution was to find special magic ores for the Gargoyle to absorb, which would help him recover. Since this was common knowledge in the demon world, the Duke was somewhat disappointed in his captain's abilities. As Yuki stepped out of the headquarters, he ran into Cecilia, who had a worried expression on her face. She ran up to him and broke the news about Tiru's worsening condition. They both rushed to where Tiru was lying, finding Shik diligently caring for her, brewing all sorts of different medicines to help her recover. On the way, Yuki updated Cecilia on the Gargoyle's condition, and they both quickly realized there might be a connection between what was happening to Tiru and the Gargoyle. Tiru lay motionless on the bed, her breathing faint. Shik worriedly reported that his supply of medicine was almost gone. The situation looked incredibly grim, but Yuki, feeling a sense of responsibility, took it upon himself to bring Shik more medicinal ingredients, reminding him of his main duty right now and promising to handle this task so Shik could focus on taking care of Tiru. Tiru woke up in a panic when she heard about the Gargoyle's condition, and with tears in her eyes, she begged them to help him recover. Cecilia soothed her, casting a gentle spell to help the little girl fall back into a peaceful sleep. Leaving the room, Yuki and Cecilia immediately got to work. After thoroughly researching where to find magic ores, Yuki headed to the trade guild. However, they were also short on supplies. Just then, Crayman walked into the shop, much to Yuki's surprise, as he discovered that this lazy vice guildmaster was actually quite popular with the women of the guild. Yuki got the details for a quest from the trade guild master, but was annoyed to find it seemed more complicated than he'd anticipated. Crayman, noticing Yuki's hesitation, tried to rope him into joining the quest right away, but Yuki refused, revealing that he was busy looking for magic ores. Crayman smiled and said that this quest was, in fact, also related to the ores, while also offering a generous cut of the reward and a chance for a promotion to A rank. Yuki finally accepted, since he couldn't afford to waste any more time. Keeping things brief and discreet, Crayman simply told Yuki to meet him in front of the guild the next morning. When the time came, Yuki was surprised to find himself accompanied by Crayman and his wife, Sophia, as well as Cecilia. The group boarded a carriage and headed straight for their destination, getting briefed on the quest details along the way. They split into two teams. Cecilia and her maid would go and gather the 6 necessary herbs, while the boys' team was given the more complex task of finding the source of the magic ores. Luckily, the quest locations were the same, as the area was known for its rich magical energy. Ever since they had gotten into the carriage, Crayman had been knocked out cold and was resting his head on Sophia's lap. When Yuki curiously asked why, Sophia nonchalantly replied that they'd just had an argument, and she had persuaded him to see her point of view. Apparently, violence was how they settled disagreements. When he came to, Crayman was completely enthralled by his wife's presence, murmuring sweet nothings and acting every bit the perfect husband. Seeing this new side to the man who usually looked like he was about to collapse, Yuki couldn't help but be surprised. When Crayman snapped out of his romantic reverie, he got back to the mission and explained that they would have to face a demon that resided in the magic ore mine. Crayman jokingly asked the group to delay reporting back to the guild so he could spend more time with his wife. In response, Sophia persuaded him once again after he carelessly used an impolite term for her, giving Crayman another lesson to remember. The group decided to deal with the monster first before continuing with their main mission. The night before they set out, Yuki eagerly wondered if he would get to see Sophia, a high-ranking adventurer in action wearing a full set of formidable armor. When it was time to prepare, Sophia did indeed put on her armor, but to everyone's surprise, it was a maid outfit. Yuki couldn't help but wonder if her husband, Crayman, had a strange fixation on maid outfits. Sophia shyly revealed that Kryman just liked seeing her in this particular attire. When pressed for more details, Kryman shared a sweet secret. He completely acknowledged Sophia's formidable strength, but he still couldn't help worrying about her safety. Seeing her in a maid outfit made the quest feel less dangerous, downplaying the actual risks of their work. Yuki felt a bit envious of the love the couple shared, and as they started to enter the mine, he curiously asked if they had any children. Kryman happily began talking about his daughter and son, but his story was cut short by monsters blocking their path. Without wasting a second, Sophia immediately charged into attack. Kryman used magic through his Shikigami ability. But true to his lazy nature, he let the paper Shikigami operate automatically with their pre-imbued power, rather than controlling them meticulously. The paper Shikigami quickly defeated the giant monsters, clearing the path for the group to venture deeper into the mine. Deeper inside, they came face to face with the real enemy, a mutated rock-eating monster, its body gleaming with an unusual luster which revealed it was the very reason the magic ores were being depleted. Kryman warned them of two things. First, not to use magic, as it would be ineffective, and second, that the monster's body needed to be kept intact after it was defeated. He suggested that Yuki allow the monster to swallow him, using protective spells to keep himself safe. But Sophia immediately stepped in, arguing that she was a better fit for this particular battle. Kryman's whole demeanor changed as he poured all his energy into protecting his wife, a level of dedication he probably wouldn't have shown for Yuki, the team's unlucky guy. The group coordinated their magic to hold the monster in place. Yuki unleashed a barrage of powerful spells. Cecilia used protective charms to bind the monster, while Kryman used his special arts and protective wards around Sophia. This time, they weren't just ordinary paper dolls, but actual shape-shifting Shikigami, a sign that Kryman was dead serious about protecting his wife. He led the team, ensuring there were no mistakes. Sophia swiftly entered the monster's belly and destroyed it from the inside. The two young couples blushed as they checked if the other was okay, while the married couple, Kryman and Sophia, openly showed their sweet affection. With the battle over, the group moved on to their next task, gathering herbs. This took quite a while as the wreckage from the fight made harvesting difficult. Finally, they headed to their lodging for the night, but before settling in, Yuki asked Cecilia if he could return to his true demon form to quickly confront an enemy. Waiting until everyone in the inn was fast asleep, Yuki went downstairs and was surprised to find Cecilia still awake. When he asked why, she showed her support and helped him sneak out. She gave Yuki all sorts of herbs, magic ore, and even food for his journey. It had been a long time since Yuki had flown in his demon form, but he was as swift as ever and soon arrived home, where Gargoyle was sleeping. Yuki tried to wake him, but Gargoyle wanted to pass away peacefully. However, he couldn't resist Yuki's determination and decided to let him do as he pleased. Without a word, Yuki began stuffing pieces of magic ore into Gargoyle's mouth. The cracks on his body slowly healed, and the ore seemed to be working wonderfully. Moreover, Gargoyle actually enjoyed their taste and asked Yuki for the whole bag of ore to enjoy at his own pace. Yuki left immediately and headed to where Tiru and Shik were. He quickly handed the herbs to a still sleepy Shik so he could begin treating Tiru. Then Yuki returned to the inn. Though removing his wings and breaking his horns was still painful, he was too exhausted to complain and snuck inside to get some sleep. The next morning, Yuki was woken up by Sophia's radiant face, as she watched over her unconscious husband in her arms, which had become a habit by now. On the way home, Yuki passed out in the carriage, completely exhausted from his journey the night before. When he woke up, he found himself lying on Cecilia's lap. And Kryman didn't miss the chance to tease them about their intimacy. A few days later, both Gargoyle and Tiru made a full recovery. The two of them grew increasingly close, which annoyed Yuki, as he himself still wasn't skilled enough to win the heart of the woman of his dreams. Every morning he'd wake up to see Gargoyle and Tiru hugging, making the miserable master's heart ache. He wondered in confusion how they had gotten so close. But the lovey-dovey atmosphere was truly unbearable for him. Yuki went into the city and happened to run into the half-lion demon he had faced before. They exchanged greetings, and Yuki was quite impressed by the bustling market, especially since the demon lord's defeat. Surprisingly, he even ran into Kryman wandering around the market, a rare sight since Kryman was usually only ever at the guild. When Yuki asked why he wasn't at the guild, Kryman replied with a gloomy look. It was because he was looking for a wedding anniversary gift, the bane of every man's existence. Finding himself with some free time, Yuki happily tagged along to help, even though Kryman hadn't asked. Yuki started picking out a few gifts he thought Kramen might like for his wife, including some rather odd choices for a wedding anniversary. Without hesitation, Yuki suggested a pair of cat ears and even put them on his own head to demonstrate how cute they looked. As a joke, Yuki then secretly slipped the cat ears into Kramen's bag. The young demon, with his unique fashion sense, also took the opportunity to buy some things for himself that he hadn't had a chance to get in a while, causing his bag to grow ever fuller with bizarre items. Yuki's bag was now so large it was like a giant boulder strapped to his back, and this unique fashion sense was not appreciated by the Vice Guild Master Kramen. He bluntly called it eccentric. But it had to be said that Kramen, the devoted husband, a compliment, had great taste in gifts. He bought a new apron and a set of imported spices. In return for Yuki's help, Kramen generously gave him an A-rank mission on his day off. Yuki, ecstatic, rushed into an alley to change. When he returned, Yuki looked like a fashion disaster. He wore a large, cumbersome mask and a long black cloak, creating a mysterious aura, but not the kind anyone wanted to investigate. The addition of mismatched accessories made his appearance even more unbearable. Accompanying the mysterious man, Kramen approached the reception desk and requested an A-rank mission for the special individual standing behind him. When the receptionist asked for his current rank and name, Yuki replied that he was Black Lightning, the magic swordsman. Unable to stand the corniness of the name, Kramen just tossed out a good luck and quickly left, leaving Yuki to handle everything himself. With his dramatic new persona, Yuki accepted 4 A-rank missions, clearly biting off more than he could chew, but he promised the receptionist he would be back within 10 days. In his ridiculous outfit, Yuki quickly completed most of the missions, but seemed surprised by everyone's cold reactions toward him. The final mission was to eliminate a group of troublesome bandits. After discovering them, he drew his lightning bolt-shaped magic sword, wielding it skillfully and casting a spell that made lightning strike the blade, creating a spectacular light show. However, the bandits weren't intimidated at all, and laughed at his ridiculous costume. Even so, Yuki quickly tied them all up, only to come face to face with an approaching night squadron, led by Raven and the Duke. Yuki declared the mission complete and prepared to leave immediately. Raven pointed at the bound bandits and whispered something to the Duke. The knights were ordered to let Sir Black Lightning go, and Yuki hid behind the trees to eavesdrop. He was genuinely surprised to see that Raven, too shy to give direct orders to his own knights, had to rely on the Duke to relay his instructions. The Duke sent Raven back to complete his important duties, while he discreetly tried to strike up a conversation with his eccentric captain. In a flustered moment, Yuki took off his mask, his face flushing with embarrassment as he realized everyone might have seen through his disguise. Quickly, he ran home to avoid any further discovery. When he got home, Yuki saw Sophia smiling gently at her husband, holding a cat ear headband. Kramen, in endless pain, was lamenting that he couldn't throw it away, because his daughter had grown too fond of it, though he had no idea who had secretly slipped it into his bag. Back at the guild, Kramen had to inform Yuki that his rank would remain at B, as the higher-ups didn't approve of the sudden promotion. Kramen advised Yuki to disguise himself as Sir Black Lightning one more time to take on an A-rank mission, but the memory was just a bitter trauma for Yuki, leaving him trembling in fear. Still reeling from the experience, Yuki entered the guild and was surprised to see Sophia at her husband's workplace. When he asked why she was there, Kramen just held up a bento box filled with beautiful chocolates. Valentine's Day had arrived. A day for happy couples to rejoice and for single people to be left empty-handed. Yuki hastily left the guild, returning to his apartment without taking any missions for the day. However, he was greeted by the sight of Teru stuffing heart-shaped chocolates into Gargoyle's mouth, which was too much for his forever alone heart to handle. Unable to bear it, Yuki sought out his only other single friend, the Duke. In a fit of frustration, Yuki's demonic aura flared up, making him look truly terrifying. Just then, Irene walked in, holding a box of chocolates, and shyly offered them to her crush. Yuki silently wished for something unfortunate to happen to the couples around him. Together with the Duke, he secretly watched Raven and Happiness, who were lost in the sweet silence of love. Yuki felt lucky that at least they were quiet and not being flashy. Entering the main city, he spotted Mikana and Yuga, also sharing their own romantic moments. It seemed like everyone was making progress in their love lives, except for him. Even Shik, the little guy, received chocolate from Cecilia. While Yuki was contemplating his life choices, including the idea of taking on the persona of Black Lightning and causing a ruckus, Cecilia found him She asked if he had eaten yet and invited him to have dinner with her. After dining at one of the most luxurious restaurants, Yuki escorted Cecilia home. Before saying goodbye, she gave him a bag full of chocolate and candy. For the first time, Yuki felt like he belonged here, that his once lonely life was over. That joy was short-lived when she gently revealed that she had prepared gifts for everyone, and he was the last one to receive his. Although slightly disappointed, Yuki happily enjoyed the cake along with a cute little card, then put away a few cookies and chocolates to save for later, tears of emotion streaming down his face. The next morning, he felt a slight pang in his heart when the Duke talked about how delicious the cookies were, but he also realized something special. No one else had received a cake like he did. That small joy felt like a sweet reward. However, this bliss didn't last long as Cecilia discovered his black lightning escapade. She pulled Yuki's ear, warning him not to do it again because it violated the guild's rules. At the guild, Yuki received a secret reward for his A-rank quest. Before leaving, Kramen asked about the cat ear headband from before, and Yuki simply confirmed his suspicions. Later, Yuki and the Duke stopped by his favorite bakery. Yuki told the Duke he had some work to do that afternoon, which surprised the Duke, who asked why Yuki would call him on his rare day off. Yuki smiled and simply replied that he just wanted to see his friends sometimes. Yuki expressed his gratitude to the Duke for helping him get his spirits back up, though the Duke just saw it as a matter of course, and joked that Yuki was probably the only one who would act so foolishly. Curious, the Duke asked if other people found Raven's voice funny, but Yuki changed the subject, worried about his upcoming date with Cecilia. The Duke remarked that it would take time for Raven to get comfortable speaking in front of people, prompting Yuki to sarcastically exclaim that it was due to the Duke's naivete. The Duke then asked about Yuki's relationship with Cecilia, and Yuki happily shared that he had planned a date, choosing his favorite bakery. Confused, the Duke asked if Yuki was just planning to eat cake and then go home. He advised Yuki to find out what Cecilia likes, or at least find a way to ask indirectly. Feeling a bit overwhelmed, Yuki sought guidance from the Duke, but he just wished him luck before leaving Yuki completely surprised. He quickly lied, saying he had just arrived even though he'd actually been there since the morning. Luckily, Yuki had built a good rapport with a friendly waitress who let him sit for a long time without ordering anything. When the waitress came to the table to ask for their order, Cecilia was overwhelmed by the tempting variety of cakes and couldn't decide. Noticing that Yuki was lost in thought, she gently asked if something was worrying him. Just then, the waitress's muscular brother came out from the kitchen, drawing the gazes of the girls with his impressive muscles. He proudly introduced a new cake recipe he had just created, and the cake turned out to be delicious, proving the power of cake and muscles. Appreciating Yuki's choice in picking the bakery, the waitress, Amy, thanked him and Cecilia, creating a warm atmosphere as everyone introduced themselves. When it was her turn, Cecilia hesitated and then decided to reveal her true identity to Amy, stressing that it was a secret. Amy was stunned, calling her Lady Cecilia in awe as she realized such an important figure was sitting in their small bakery. Excited but respectful, Amy expressed her wish that her brother would also grow up to be like Cecilia. Her curiosity piqued, Cecilia asked more about Amy's brother. Amy shared that his name was Andre and told the tragic story of their family. Their parents, who were talented pastry chefs, died in the war against the Demon Lord. The two siblings, admiring their parents' dedication, faced pressure from society, being called careless for opening a bakery during such difficult times. Andre, determined to protect his sister, constantly trained his body to become a pillar of support for her. Andre's muscles concealed a tearful past which impressed Cecilia even more. As heroes began to appear in the world, the criticism aimed at Andre and Amy started to fade. Cecilia invited Andre to bake with her, but he refused, saying he needed to focus on his physical training. Determined to prove himself, Andre joined the guild and reached B rank, surprising both Yuki and Cecilia. After leaving the bakery, Yuki wasn't sure where to take Cecilia next, feeling as if she was testing him. Without a perfect plan for their date, Yuki decided to follow the Duke's plan, which led him and Cecilia to unintentionally trail the Duke into a medicine shop. Cecilia then suggested visiting a clothing store, where she picked out a gift for Yuki that suited his unique style, making him blush with happiness. When Yuki offered to buy something for her, she declined, explaining that her outfits were carefully managed by Sophiason due to her noble background. They continued their journey, unintentionally following the Duke's path to a Kenjutsu dojo, where Yuki felt a bit inadequate by comparison. Afterward, when Cecilia excitedly suggested stopping by a flower shop, Yuki breathed a sigh of relief, feeling freed from the pressure of planning their next move on the date. Cecilia began to tell Yuki about her encounters with Shik, who was teaching her all about flowers. Yuki grew curious, realizing Shik must be very knowledgeable about plants. The two continued their conversation, discussing the frequent meetings between Shik and the gardeners at the mansion. They talked about flowers that could be used as spices or brewed into tea, and Yuki noticed that Cecilia and Shik seemed to get along quite well, as if they naturally belonged in each other's world. Curiosity prompted Yuki to ask Cecilia to share more of what she had learned from Shik. He was surprised to learn that some flowers could be used as medicine, as he had always thought of them as items simply for admiration. This thought changed Yuki's perspective, making him realize that the beauty of flowers lay not just in their appearance, but also in their utility. He thought to himself that this date was going better than he'd expected. If he could just take her to one more special place, it would surely be the best date he'd ever had. This time, he decided to fully trust the Duke's plan and quietly follow along. As they continued on their way, Yuki noticed the street was becoming more and more deserted. When Cecilia suddenly noticed someone, Yuki's curiosity grew as he tried to make sense of their surroundings. They realized they had arrived at a horseback archery range. Suddenly, a group of children rushed towards Cecilia, enveloping her in warm hugs and calling her Saint Mother. Yuki's surprise grew and he wondered what was going on. The orphanage manager, Debate, approached and asked Yuki if he was a friend of Cecilia's. She introduced herself and explained that Cecilia often visited the orphanage to do charity work, teaching and playing with the children. It was clear the kids adored and were attached to Cecilia due to her kindness and compassion. After they finished their shopping, Debate invited Yuki and Cecilia to visit the orphanage. The children were incredibly excited to hear that Cecilia was coming, and Yuki happily helped carry their things, impressing the children with his strength. When they arrived at the orphanage, Yuki quickly took on the role of entertainer, bringing joy to the eager children. Both Cecilia and Yuki had a wonderful time with the kids, but Cecilia advised him not to use magic to avoid drawing attention. Yuki apologized, and they also apologized for staying so long. While cooking dinner with Debate, she reassured them that it was no bother at all, and invited them to come back anytime. Reflecting on their memorable day, Cecilia playfully asked if her presence had ruined Yuki's plans. He confessed that he didn't really have any specific plan, but happily recounted their fun experiences at the clothing store, the flower shop, and the orphanage. Finally, Cecilia thanked him for walking her home, and Yuki realized the date had gone well, even if it left a bit of awkwardness between them. Later, Yuki shared his experience with the Duke, and he felt satisfied when the Duke commented that all the effort had been worth it. Confused, Yuki asked the Duke to explain further, and was surprised to learn that the Duke had secretly arranged the entire date. Completely astonished, Yuki asked again just to be sure, and the Duke explained that he had meticulously planned Yuki and Cecilia's date, from researching activities she might enjoy to arranging the destinations, even ensuring that their encounter at the orphanage was no coincidence. This meticulous planning left Yuki both frightened and amazed. When Yuki asked about the Duke's date, he shared that they had just wandered through random places. The Duke explained that Irene was knowledgeable about medicine and enjoyed mixing potions, so they had visited the medicine shop. The Duke had also learned a bit about medicine thanks to Shik. In addition, they watched a match at the Kenjutsu dojo and participated in horseback archery. Yuki silently admired the Duke's efforts, but he also realized that the Duke had wanted him to experience it all for himself, instead of explaining it beforehand. Thinking about it, Yuki understood that he needed to be better prepared for his future dates. With determination, he set to work creating a special sweet for Cecilia at the bustling bakery. After Cecilia had surprised him with a cake and homemade cookies, Yuki wanted to return the favor with a gift he made himself. However, anxiety crept in, as he had never tried making such complex pastries before. Overcoming his fear, Yuki sought help from Amy and spent the entire week learning baking skills. With deep gratitude for Amy's dedicated guidance, he expressed his sincere thanks every evening after the shop closed. Meanwhile, Andre was also diligently teaching himself how to bake. Both Yuki and Amy were stunned when Andre showed off his beautiful creation, full of pride and grateful to his little sister for her care and encouragement. As Yuki returned home, filled with excitement, a friend came to visit and asked about his plans. Yuki explained about White Day, a day to return the favor for Valentine's Day, and shared his excitement. As the night drew to a close, Yuki couldn't stop thinking about the next day, the moment he would give Cecilia a gift straight from the heart. The next day, Cecilia was absolutely overjoyed and wouldn't stop praising Yuki, making his face turn bright red with embarrassment. Suddenly, Yuga unexpectedly walked in with a gift for Cecilia, infuriating Yuki, who thought Yuga should have knocked first. Cecilia, with her usual calm, advised Yuga to be more careful, and Yuga quickly apologized. Yuga questioned Yuki about why he was in Cecilia's room so early in the morning on White Day. As it turned out, Yuga had also come to give Cecilia a gift. Since Cecilia had given sweets to so many people on Valentine's Day, a whole line of people had come today, including some special characters to return the favor. Even Mukina showed up, revealing that on a previous Valentine's, they had caused chaos throughout the city, and the knights had to be called in to restore order. To be better prepared this time, Mukina had requested a group of swordsmen to bring along some knights to ensure security for the gift-giving. As Yuga gave his gift to Cecilia, Yuki couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy, but Mukina advised him to let them enjoy their private moment. When Yuki wondered if that bothered Mukina, she just smiled and said she didn't want to get in the way. Then, Yuga surprisingly gave Mukina a gift, a dress he had found at the market, as a way of thanking her for always taking care of him. Unexpectedly, the dress was the traditional attire of female mages from a foreign land, which surprised Mukina. After their exchange, both Yuga and Mukina left. Meanwhile, Yuki told Cecilia about Gargoyle's intention to give Tiru a return gift. Intrigued by the story, Yuki suggested they go back to his room and invited Cecilia to join. Upon entering, Yuki was annoyed to see Gargoyle touching Tiru, but Cecilia quickly intervened and explained that Yuki had misunderstood the situation. Not wanting any more trouble, Gargoyle quickly ushered them out of the room. Cecilia then suggested returning to the mansion. But on the way, they decided to stop by Kramen's place to see if Sophia had left anything. The guild manager greeted them warmly, and both Cecilia and Yuki were surprised by the abundance of cookies. The woman explained that her husband, with the help of his shikigami, had prepared these cookies as White Day gifts. On their way out, Cecilia recounted that Shik also gives her mother gifts on White Day, an herbal tea that helps relieve shoulder stiffness and enhances beauty. Yuki suddenly realized that even though Shik was just a child, he was no ordinary kid. While feeling pleased with how things had turned out on White Day, Yuki suddenly remembered he had forgotten something. He suggested they visit Raven with Hapines. When they arrived, Yuki asked about Raven's whereabouts, but the knights guarding the area said Raven was already inside and had taken Hapines with him. Cecilia stepped forward and shared with Yuki that Raven had met Hapines during the last security check and had given her a White Day gift. Hapines was wondering whether or not she should open Raven's gift, which made Yuki burst out laughing, remarking that the two of them hadn't changed at all. While Yuki waited with anticipation, Raven appeared, cracking a rare smile, and revealed that he had invited Hapines to join them. Yuki excitedly shared his plan, hoping the three of them could spend some time together. However, Duke and Cecilia couldn't make it due to prior commitments, making Yuki feel a bit like a third wheel as the group prepared to leave. Just as they were about to go, Yuki suddenly stopped, saying they were waiting for one more person. Raven thought it might be Cecilia, but when Hapines appeared, everyone was surprised to learn that this was the signal for a new mission. Yuki explained that although Hapines wasn't as strong as Duke, she possessed formidable combat skills and had been a loyal subordinate in past battles. Hapines uses feathers and magic in combat, but her power diminishes if she runs out of her feathers. Raven, surprised and a little regretful for underestimating Hapines, quickly apologized to her. Yuki saw this as an opportunity for the two of them to grow closer. Both Yuki and Raven apologized to Hapines for making her wait. Afterward, they discussed splitting the cost of the horse-drawn carriage, but when Hapines offered to pay, Raven insisted on taking care of it. When Raven stepped away for a moment, Yuki took the opportunity to compliment Hapines' dress and asked curiously about the patterns on it. Hapines revealed that the patterns were actually where she hid her secret weapons, leaving Yuki amazed by her hidden arsenal. Continuing on their journey, they finally reached their destination and realized they needed to find an inn to use as a base. Raven started jotting down important information, but Yuki offered to find an inn in his place. Both of them reluctantly admitted they needed to improve their communication skills, especially when working in a team. After setting down their belongings, they turned their focus back to the mission. Even so, no one seemed willing to start the discussion about the mission, making Yuki feel like he would have to be the one to lead. He shared with the group that their client was the mayor of Freemer, and the mission was to deal with the thefts plaguing the merchant ships. Raven speculated that the thieves might be pirates, based on a notice board they had seen earlier. He also mentioned a similar mission he had accepted on a previous journey, where he had gathered information to track down a pirate hideout. However, Yuki cut in, wanting to add more information. He explained that they couldn't be sure if the culprits were actually pirates, since the money and goods vanished mysteriously while everyone on board was asleep. Raven found it strange that no one noticed any suspicious activity, as there should have been crew members on watch. This led them to suspect the crew might be secretly involved in the thefts. Additionally, Yuki hypothesized that the entire crew could have conspired to steal the money and goods, though this was just speculation. To make faster progress, Yuki suggested they split up. He planned to meet with the head of the Merchants Guild to find more clues while Raven and Happiness would approach the crew members. Yuki thought that by bringing the members closer, their teamwork would improve, and he secretly planned to set up a date for Raven and Happiness after the mission was complete. Meanwhile, Raven and Happiness began gathering information by questioning the crew members. But some of the sailors looked down on them, enraging Raven and causing him to reveal his true strength. Noticing the situation wasn't progressing, Yuki observed quietly from a distance, thinking about his next move. Unable to hold back, he decided to intervene in the conversation, and took the opportunity to introduce himself with a confident air, claiming to be Raven. Amidst the banter, Happiness realized she'd never met this sailor before, which made her surprised to see Yuki acting so naturally, as if they'd known each other for a long time. The man, calling himself Masa, introduced himself as a sailor, and even flexed his powerful muscles. As Yuki tried to focus on the mission, Masa couldn't help but proudly ask about Yuki's attention to his muscular physique. "Are you just going to ignore my amazing muscles?" Yuki apologized and admitted that he had met people with similar builds before, but quickly steered the conversation back to the mission. Thanking Masa for agreeing to help, Masa explained that his crew was now being treated like criminals because of the mysteriously missing cargo and that no one believed they were innocent. If this kept up, they'd all be branded as petty thieves. Masa sadly admitted it was a terrible situation for the seafaring men, and everyone was drowning in anxiety. He pleaded, "You have to believe me. We didn't steal a thing." Left with no other choice, Masa remained determined to see his mission through. Yuki's group reassured him, saying it was understandable to feel anxious when falsely accused, and that they were only there to help uncover the truth. Yuki addressed the crew, urging them to work together to get to the bottom of things. "Let's find the truth, no matter what it takes," he said with determination. The group huddled in a corner, ready to gather information. The investigation went on for a full day, and finally, a flash of memory helped Yuki connect the dots from the information they had gathered. Sifting through the fragmented clues, Yuki discovered a surprising amount of overlap between the different accounts. Happiness praised Raven for his excellent work, and brought them both a refreshing cup of tea. Raven continued the discussion about the mission, sharing what they'd gathered. He suspected a monster was involved, since those affected seemed to lose their memories after hearing an enchanting song. Both Raven and Yuki pondered the possibility of mermaids existing in this world. Yuki's questions sparked even more curiosity, and Raven revealed another crucial clue. Someone claimed to have seen a mermaid in a nearby cave, and she was carrying a lot of luggage. The group was stunned by this revelation, especially since the informant added that the mermaid appeared to have a large number of cargo chests with her. Yuki was skeptical, finding the information a little too convenient. But Raven agreed they should investigate to find out for sure. They decided to explore the cave the next morning. As dawn broke, Yuki's group arrived at the cave and discovered a series of cargo crates scattered about. Clearly, something valuable had been stolen. Casting a tense mood over the scene, as they were pondering the possible presence of a mythical creature, a beautiful mermaid suddenly emerged from the water, plunging them into a perilous situation. The mermaid's enchanting song had the power to mesmerize and confuse anyone who heard it. To resist, the team had to plug their ears to block out the captivating melody, but this also left them defenseless. Yuki confessed that despite his best efforts, he couldn't completely block out the mesmerizing sound. Just when all hope seemed lost, Happiness suddenly stepped forward and began to sing. Her melodious voice blended with the mermaid's, creating a counter-melody that weakened the sea creature's hold over them. Though feeling a bit dizzy from the song's effects, Yuki noticed something extraordinary. Raven was completely unaffected, moving with incredible agility. Curiosity stirred within Yuki as he realized Raven might possess a special ability, to only hear the voice of the one he loves. This suggested that love might just be the key. Seizing this rare opportunity, they signaled for Happiness to stop singing, and with renewed determination, they bravely faced the enchanting mermaid. To everyone's astonishment, Happiness stepped forward, positioning herself in front of the mermaid as if to protect her. Both Yuki and Raven were stunned, as Happiness, against all expectations, chose to act as a shield for the mermaid. The mysterious connection between them seemed to signal a dramatic confrontation. The stage was set for an epic battle, and what fate awaits our heroes as the story delves into even deeper mysteries? Don't miss the next thrilling installment, where every unanswered question will be revealed.